Hey guys, how are you all? Today we are going to discuss the limiting and excess reagent. But before I talk about it, I would like to tell you that I just made my YouTube channel and the videos are blur initially. So sorry for that. Now let's talk about the limiting and excess reagent. So first of all, what is a reagent or reactant? So basically, those things which are combined to form the product, they are called the reactant. For example, carbon dioxide, it is produced from the oxygen and carbon. So the carbon and oxygen and this reaction are reactant. Similarly, water is produced from hydrogen and oxygen. So in this reaction, the hydrogen and oxygen, they are the reactant. Now let's come to the limiting and excess reagent. So in a reaction, there may be some type of reactant which consumes first in a reaction, which is finished first in a reaction. So that type of reactant are called the limiting reagent. So the reagent which consumes first in a chemical reaction is called the limiting reagent, or we can also define it as the reagent which control the formation of product in a chemical reaction is called the limiting reagent. So how it control the formation of the product? So basically, when the limiting reagent finish consumed, so then the reaction stops. The reaction does not occur further. So when the reaction does not occur further, the product will not form. So that's how in this way it controls the formation of the product. We can also define it as the reagent whose concentration or amount is less than the stoichiometric amount is called the limiting reagent. So these are some definitions of limiting reagent. Now let's talk about the excess reagent. So in the reaction, there are certain reactant which is left after the completion of the reaction. When the reaction completes or stops, so after that there still some reactant are present. So that reactant is called the excess reagent. So we can define it as the reagent which does not consume first in a chemical reaction is called the excess reagent, or the reagent which does not control the formation of product is called the excess reagent. So these are definitions of the limiting and excess reagent. Now let's talk about how to find the limiting reagent. So here are some steps. By following, if we want to find the limiting reagent, so here are certain steps for that. The first thing, we have to convert the given amount of each reactant into moles. For example, the amount of reactant is given in term of mole. So first convert it into mole by this formula, that the mole is equal to the volume divided by the molar volume, and we know that molar volume is equal to 22.4 decimeter cube, and volume will be given to you. So by this formula, firstly convert it into mole. Now if the amount is given in number of particle mean atoms, ions or molecules, so first convert that into mole by this formula, that mole is equal to number of particle divided by Avogadro number, which is equal to 6.023 cross 10 to the power 23. So the first step is to convert the given amount into product. Now into moles. Now the second step that we have is to find the number of moles of the product produced from each reactant. Find the amount of product produced from each reactant with the help of balance chemical equation. We have to write the balance chemical equation, and with the help of that we will find the number of moles of the product formed from each reactant. Now the last step we have is to look that which one reactant gives the least number of the product, least number of the moles of the product. So that reactant which gives the least number of the moles of product will be the limiting reagent. So these are the three steps with the help of which we can find the limiting reagent. But I will tell you the shortest way to find the limiting reagent, and that is the comparison of the moles of the reactant. I will tell you that later. Okay, so now let's I have written an example. Let's apply these steps on this reaction and find the limiting reagent. So the question is, if 10 moles of hydrogen react with 7 moles of oxygen, the limiting reactant or reagent will be. So for this, first of all, we have to write the chemical equation. Okay, like hydrogen react with oxygen to form the water. Let's balance it. Now it is asked that which one is the limiting reagent. So the first step is already done because they have given us the quantity in term of moles. So the first step is already done. Now the second step that we have to do is to find the number of moles of the product formed from each reactant. So now this equation shows that 2 mole of hydrogen gives 2 mole of water. So if 2 moles of hydrogen gives 2 moles of water, so 10 moles of hydrogen will give how many moles of water? So it is very simple. 2 gives 2, so 10 moles of hydrogen will give 10 moles of water. So 10 moles of hydrogen will give 10 moles of water. Now oxygen. Now let's come to oxygen. In the equation it is written as 1 mole of oxygen gives 2 mole of water. So if 1 mole of oxygen gives 2 mole of water, so 7 moles of hydrogen will give how many moles of water? So similar, it is increased 7 times, so it should also be increased 7 times, so it will give us 14 moles of water. Okay, so now look, hydrogen gives 10 mole of water and oxygen gives 14 moles of water. So which one is the limiting reagent? According to third step, which gives the least number of moles of the product will be the limiting reagent. So obviously the hydrogen is the limiting reagent because it gives the least moles of the product. So that is how we can find the limiting reagent. And I told you that I will tell you the shortest and quick way to find the limiting reagent. So let's do that how we can do it directly. So the balanced chemical equation shows that for 2 mole of hydrogen 1 mole of oxygen is required. So now tell me that for 10 moles of hydrogen how many moles of oxygen will be required? So do cross multiplication. So x2 is equal to 10 and the x is equal to 5. So it shows that for 10 moles of hydrogen 5 moles of oxygen are required, but we have 7 moles of oxygen, so it shows that the oxygen is excess reagent and the hydrogen is limiting reagent because oxygen 5 moles of oxygen, only 5 moles of oxygen are required, but we have 7 moles of oxygen. 2 moles of oxygen are greater than the required. So that is why the oxygen is the excess reagent and the hydrogen is limiting reagent. Now let's move to the other problems. The problem is, which one is the limiting reagent in the following reaction? Reaction is given to us and it is asked that which one of the following is the limiting reagent. So remember that in this reaction none of them is the limiting reagent. Why? Note it. Because in in the balance chemical equation, no one is the limiting reagent. If the equation is balanced, so then there will be no limiting reagent. Keep it in mind. I can give you another example, that for example hydrogen. Okay, so the second example is when hydrogen reacts with oxygen to form 2 mole of water. So now this equation is balanced. So in this equation the limiting reagent is none of them. No one is the limiting reagent in this equation. So in balanced chemical equation, no one is limiting reagent. That's all. Now let's come to another example, that if equal moles of methane, CH4, and oxygen are combined to form water and carbon dioxide, so the limiting reagent will be. So first of all we should write the balanced chemical equation. It's methane combined with the oxygen, it gives us carbon dioxide and water. So let's balance it. Now it is balanced. Okay, so in this question the limiting reagent is oxygen. Here is a trick for it, and that is, note, if equal moles of reactant are given, then the limiting reactant will be that one having greater coefficient. If equal moles of reactant are given, then the limiting reagent and that reaction will be that one having greater coefficient. Now when no coefficient is given or shown, so it means that here is 1. Okay, so the coefficient of methane is 1 and that of oxygen is 2, so the oxygen is a limiting reagent. And we can do it. Look here, we can confirm it. Okay, the balanced chemical equation shows that for 1 mole of methane 2 mole of oxygen are required, and if I double it, if I take 2 moles of methane, then 4 moles of oxygen will be required. But the question is if equal moles are given. Okay, so for example I can take that 2. Okay, I can take the 2 moles of methane react with 2 moles of oxygen. Okay, the question is like this. You can take another one like 4. Okay, 4 or 2 moles, anything you can take. Okay, but I took 2 moles. Okay, 2 moles of methane and 2 moles of oxygen. But now here for 2 mole of methane 4 moles of oxygens are required, but I took 2, so the limiting reagent is oxygen. Now the third problem is if equal moles of hydrogen and nitrogen combine to form ammonia NH3, the limiting reagent will be. Same question like that one. First of all we have to write the equation, that hydrogen combined with nitrogen, it gives us NH3. Let's balance it. So now in this question the limiting reagent is hydrogen because it has greater coefficient, and if equal moles are given, then the limiting reagent will be that one having greater coefficient. Now let's come to the fourth problem, that if 5 mole of hydrogen react with 5 moles of oxygen to form water, the excess reagent will be. This question is same as that the second and third one. Okay, first of all we have to write the equation that hydrogen react with oxygen, it gives us water. Okay, now it is balanced. Now I told you that if equal moles are given, okay, so the limiting reagent will be that one having greater coefficient. Now equal moles are given, 5 moles of hydrogen and 5 moles of water, oxygen, sorry. So now the limiting reagent will be hydrogen because it has greater coefficient. So, but the question is about excess reagent. So obviously the excess reagent will be oxygen. Oxygen will be the excess reagent. And we can confirm it. Look here. For 2 moles of hydrogen, 1 mole of oxygen is required. This equation shows us that for 2 moles of hydrogen, 1 mole of oxygen is required. Now for 5 moles of hydrogen, how many mole of oxygen will be required? So by cross multiplication we can do it here. 5 cross 1 is equal to 2x. So it is equal to, x is equal to 5 divided by 2, which is equal to 2.5. For 5 moles of hydrogen, 2.5 moles of oxygen are required. But we have 5 moles of oxygen. So it is excess reagent. That's it. It is very easy. Now let's come to another example. That if equal volume of hydrogen and nitrogen are combined to form NH3 ammonia, the limiting reagent will be. So same concept. If equal, again we have to write the balanced chemical equation, like the equation that hydrogen react with nitrogen and it gives us ammonia NH3. Okay, so 2 3 balance it. So the same concept. Okay, the limiting reagent will be obviously the hydrogen one. Why? So note it that if equal volumes of reactant are given, the limiting reagent will be that one having greater coefficient. So the coefficient of hydrogen is 3 and that of nitrogen is 1. So hydrogen is the limiting reagent. Now let's come to the 6th example problem. Okay, that if 16 multiplied by 10 to the power 20 molecules of nitrogen react with 16 cross 10 to the power 20 molecules of hydrogen to form NH3, the limiting reagent will be. So first of all we should write the equation that hydrogen react with nitrogen, it gives us ammonia NH3. Okay, balance it now. Now it is a same concept again. The limiting reagent will be hydrogen. These are very great shortcuts and it helps us to find or solve the problem within seconds. Okay, so how it will be the nitrogen, the limiting reagent will be hydrogen. Hydrogen will be the limiting reagent because it has greater coefficient. So note it that if equal amount of particles, particles mean atoms, ions or molecules. So if equal amount of particles are given, so again the limiting reagent will be that one having greater coefficient. So hydrogen is the limiting reagent. And you know the logic behind this is if equal moles are given, okay, so if we convert it into moles, so it will give us the same number of moles, because we know that mole is equal to number of particles divided by Avogadro numbers. So this is constant. Okay, and if number of particles are same, so then obviously the number of moles of both reactant will be same. So that's the logic behind it. Okay, that if equal number of moles are given, molecules are given, so the moles will be automatically the same. There is the all. Now let's come to the last example, seventh one, that 2 mole manganese dioxide react with 4 mole of potassium hydroxide plus oxygen plus chlorine. So it gives us 2 KMnO4 potassium permanganate, okay, and 2 mole of potassium chloride and 2 mole of water. So now the question is, for the above reaction, for the reaction above, there are 100 mole of each reactant available. Which reactant is the limiting reagent? So obviously we solve problem like this, that if equal, now here again equal number of moles are given. So if equal number of moles are given, so then the limiting reagent will be that reactant having greater coefficient. So obviously the potassium hydroxide will be the limiting reagent because it has a greater coefficient. Thank you very much for watching video, and sorry the videos will be blur because as I told you before, okay, in the start of the video, that I just made a YouTube channel, so in the beginning the videos are blur. Sorry for that, and thank you for watching, and we'll meet in the next video.